What if the very prayers you've been crying out to heaven are actually pushing God further away from you? I know that sounds almost heretical, especially if you've grown up believing that prayer is your direct line to the divine, your spiritual lifeline when everything else fails. But stay with me until the end of this video, because what Smith Wigglesworth discovered about true communion with God will completely revolutionize not just the way you pray, but your entire understanding of who you really are in relation to the divine. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you fallen to your knees, desperately pleading for breakthrough? How many hours have you spent pouring out your heart, listing your needs, explaining your problems to God as if He didn't already know them? You've treated prayer like a spiritual transaction. You bring your requests, you demonstrate your faith, you wait for delivery. And when nothing changes, you question everything: your worthiness, your faith, God's willingness to help you. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Has this ever happened to you? You pray intensely for peace, yet anxiety tightens its grip around your chest even more. You beg God for financial provision, but the bills keep mounting and the bank account keeps shrinking. You cry out for healing, for restoration, for breakthrough, and somehow the very thing you're praying about seems to get worse instead of better. It's exhausting, isn't it? This endless cycle of asking and waiting, hoping and disappointment. Here's what Smith Wigglesworth understood that most believers miss entirely. Every single time you beg God for something, you're making a cosmic declaration. You're announcing to the universe, to your own spirit, to the very fabric of reality itself: I don't have this. I am separate from this. I am lacking this. When you plead for abundance, your energy is screaming poverty. When you desperately ask for peace, you're vibrating at the frequency of chaos. It's a spiritual paradox that keeps millions of sincere believers trapped in a prison of their own making. The uncomfortable truth is that your prayers might be the very chains binding you to the experiences you're trying to escape. Not because prayer itself is wrong, but because you've fundamentally misunderstood what prayer actually is and how divine connection truly works. What you're about to discover in this teaching will challenge everything you've been told about accessing God's power, but it holds the key to a dimension of spiritual reality that most people never touch. Smith Wigglesworth didn't just preach about faith. He lived in a realm where the miraculous was normal, where the impossible bowed to divine presence. And the secret wasn't in asking harder or believing stronger. The secret was in something far more profound, something that transforms you from a beggar at heaven's gate into a living expression of divine consciousness itself. Think of it like this. Right now, as you're reading these words, invisible radio waves are passing through your body. Hundreds of broadcasts, thousands of signals, all transmitting simultaneously through the very air you're breathing. Music, news, conversations, all of it flowing around you constantly. But you can't hear any of it unless you have a receiver tuned to the right frequency. The broadcast isn't the problem. Your positioning is. This is exactly what's happening in your spiritual life. And it's the hidden truth behind why some prayers seem to work, while others fall into a void of silence. When you approach God from desperation, when your inner world is consumed by fear of what you don't have, by anxiety about what might happen, by worry about what could go wrong, you're broadcasting on a very specific frequency. And that frequency isn't one of reception, it's one of resistance. Your entire being becomes a walking declaration of absence. Every thought screaming, I need this because I don't have it. Every emotion pulsing, I'm afraid because I'm not safe. Every prayer emanating, I'm begging because I'm powerless. The universe, which responds not to your words but to your energetic signature, mirrors this back to you with mathematical precision. You get more experiences of lack, more situations that confirm your powerlessness, more evidence that you're separate from what you need. This is the journey that breaks most people. They pray harder, believing that intensity will finally break through. They add more faith, more persistence, more desperation to their petitions. But it's like trying to tune into a radio station by turning the volume up on static. You're not getting closer to the signal, you're just making the noise louder. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because what Smith Wigglesworth and the great mystics discovered changes everything about how spiritual power actually operates. They found something that most religious teachings completely overlook, something that sounds almost dangerous to conventional ears. The most powerful spiritual state you can enter has nothing to do with asking God for anything, nothing to do with building faith in your requests, nothing to do with convincing heaven to intervene in your circumstances. If this resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and join this community exploring what it means to live from divine consciousness rather than limited human thinking. The real transformation, the shift that opens dimensions of divine power most people never touch, happens when you stop treating God like a helper you call upon and start allowing God to become your actual mind, not your assistant waiting in the wings, not your cosmic advisor you consult during emergencies, but your consciousness itself, your thinking, your awareness, the very lens through which you perceive reality. This isn't about getting God to think about you. It's about letting God think as you. And the impact of this shift, the revelations that emerge when you make this transition from asking to becoming, will transform every single area of your life in ways you cannot yet imagine. Because suddenly, you're no longer tuned to the frequency of lack, desperately trying to attract what you don't have. You're resonating at the frequency of divine fullness itself, and everything in your reality begins rearranging to match that vibration. Write, "I'm ready for this shift" in the comments if something inside you is recognizing this truth. From the moment you were born, you've been conditioned to believe in distance. You're here, on earth, small and limited. God is there, somewhere beyond the clouds, vast and unreachable. There's a gap between you, an unbridgeable chasm that only prayer can somehow traverse if you're lucky, if you're worthy, if you ask correctly. This is the framework almost everyone operates from. Human on one side, divine on the other. Separation as the fundamental truth of existence. But what if this entire framework is a lie? What if the gap you've been trying to cross your whole life doesn't actually exist, except in your own perception? Smith Wigglesworth understood something that most believers miss completely. The separation isn't real. It never was. Divine abundance, divine guidance, divine power, all of it is flowing toward you right now in this very moment like a river that has never stopped running. Not for a single second, not even when you couldn't feel it, when your prayers seemed to hit a ceiling, when heaven felt silent and distant. The problem has never been on the supply side. God isn't holding anything back from you. The universe isn't playing favorites, showering blessings on some while withholding from others. Heaven isn't waiting for you to finally pray the right prayer with the right formula before releasing what you need. The supply is constant, infinite, eternal. The blockage is on the receiving side. Your consciousness is positioned in the wrong place. Think about your radio sitting on your kitchen counter right now. While you're making coffee, while you're scrolling through your phone, dozens of broadcasts are passing through that exact space. Classical music on one frequency, talk radio on another, news updates, jazz, rock, conversations in languages you don't even speak. All of it transmitting clearly and perfectly through the air around you. But if your radio is tuned to a station playing static, or worse, if it's turned off completely, you won't hear any of it. The broadcast hasn't stopped. The signal isn't weak. You're simply not positioned to receive it. This is the exact mechanism behind unanswered prayer. Divine intelligence is broadcasting solutions to your problems right now. Guidance for that decision keeping you awake at night. Clarity about the relationship that's falling apart. The breakthrough you've been desperately seeking. It's all transmitting clearly, powerfully, continuously. But your inner radio, your consciousness, your mindset, your habitual patterns of thinking, is tuned to the wrong frequency. You're set to anxiety FM when the divine broadcast is coming through on peace. You're locked onto lack when abundance is flowing on a completely different channel. Your mind is so consumed with fearful thoughts, so dominated by worry about what might go wrong, so cluttered with anxious mental calculations about how to control outcomes and force situations to work, that you literally cannot perceive what's already being given to you. The revelation is right there. The answer is being transmitted. But you're broadcasting so much internal noise that the signal gets drowned out completely. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding the mechanics of frequency is one thing, but learning how to actually retune your consciousness, how to shift from the channel of desperation to the channel of reception, that's where everything changes. Behind the scenes of your awareness, divine intelligence has already arranged circumstances, prepared opportunities, orchestrated solutions. The question isn't whether heaven is responding. The question is whether you're positioned to notice. Drop retuning now in the comments if this is starting to click for you. Here's what most people don't realize about divine intelligence. It's not waiting for you to ask the right question before it starts working on your behalf. Right now, in this exact moment, there's a cosmic broadcast running that contains answers to questions you haven't even thought to ask yet. Solutions to problems you're currently facing that seem impossible. Guidance for those decisions that keep you tossing and turning at 3 in the morning, running endless scenarios in your mind, trying to figure out which path leads to safety and which leads to disaster. This broadcast isn't something that gets turned on when you pray hard enough or believe strong enough. It's been running since before you were born. It will continue long after you're gone. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without interruption, without pause, without requiring anything from you to keep it transmitting. The music is always there. The signal is always clear. The answers are always flowing. The only question that matters, the only question that determines whether you live in breakthrough or remain stuck in frustration, is this: are you positioned to receive it? Because here's the brutal truth about how energy works, about how the universe responds to your internal state. When you pray from desperation, something happens at a level most people never perceive. Your entire being begins vibrating at a very specific frequency, and that frequency isn't one of openness or receptivity. It's the frequency of lack. Underneath your carefully chosen words, beneath your sincere intentions, below even your conscious awareness, there's an energetic signal broadcasting relentlessly into the fabric of reality itself. That signal is saying, I am incomplete, I am broken, I am separate from what I need. I don't have this thing I'm asking for, which is why I'm asking for it. Your desperation, no matter how spiritually you try to package it, is a declaration of absence. And the universe, which operates on principles far more precise than most realize, mirrors this back to you with mathematical accuracy. You pray for financial breakthrough while vibrating at the frequency of poverty, and you get more experiences that confirm your lack. You beg for peace while resonating with anxiety, and situations arise that give you more reasons to be anxious. You ask for love while energetically broadcasting unworthiness, and relationships continue to reflect that unworthiness back to you. This isn't punishment. It's not God being cruel or the universe playing games with you. It's simply how reality works. Your external circumstances are always matching your internal vibration. Not your words, not your affirmations, not even your beliefs, if those beliefs don't reach deep enough to shift your actual energetic state. The impact of this truth on your daily life is staggering once you really grasp it. Every moment you spend in desperate prayer, you're actually reinforcing the very condition you're trying to escape. Every tear-filled petition is energetically cementing the experience of lack. It's like trying to fill a bucket with water while drilling holes in the bottom. The harder you try, the more frustrated you become and the emptier you remain. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding what's happening is powerful. But learning how to actually shift your vibration, how to move from broadcasting lack to resonating with divine fullness, that's where the real transformation begins. There's a way to pray that doesn't reinforce separation, a way to connect with God that doesn't come from desperation. And when you discover it, everything about your reality starts rearranging itself to match this new frequency you're emanating. Type shifting vibration in the comments if you're recognizing this pattern in your own life. So what actually happens when you make this shift? When you stop operating from desperation and start allowing divine consciousness to become your actual mind, the transformation that unfolds is unlike anything you've experienced through traditional prayer, because suddenly, Instead of vibrating at the frequency of I don't have, you begin resonating with fullness. Instead of broadcasting separation, you start embodying union. There's a quiet confidence that settles into your being when this shift occurs, and it's not the kind of confidence that comes from positive thinking or forcing yourself to believe things that don't feel true. It's something far deeper, far more solid than that. It's a cellular recognition, a knowing that lives in your bones, that what God has, you have. What God is, you are. Not as some distant future possibility you're trying to attract, but as present reality you're finally allowing yourself to perceive. I know how that sounds. It sounds arrogant, maybe even blasphemous depending on your background. But stay with me, because this isn't arrogance at all. True arrogance would be thinking your good comes from your own clever strategies, your own relentless effort, your ability to manipulate circumstances through willpower. This is actually the most humble posture possible, recognizing that you are not the source but the channel, that your good doesn't originate with you. It flows through you as divine expression, the same way a river flows through a landscape it didn't create. If this video connected with you, a simple like helps this teaching reach others searching for exactly what you just discovered. The beauty of this revelation is that it requires nothing complicated to access. No years of training, no elaborate rituals, no special initiation into secret knowledge. The transformation begins with something so simple you might be tempted to dismiss it. Just 10 minutes of your day. That's all. But here's what makes these 10 minutes different from every other spiritual practice you've tried. You're not going to sit down and start rattling off your list of needs like you're placing an order at a cosmic restaurant. You're not going to beg or plead or try to convince God to finally pay attention to your situation. Instead, you sit quietly, breathe, and say one simple thing within yourself. I'm now open to receive all that God is giving me. Notice the fundamental shift happening in that single sentence. There's no desperation, no bargaining, no anxious energy trying to make something happen through force of will. You're simply acknowledging a truth that's always been operating, whether you recognized it or not. Divine supply is already flowing. The broadcast is already transmitting. The river is already running in your direction. You're just opening yourself to receive it, the same way the earth receives rain, without effort, without anxiety, without needing to convince the sky to release what it's already releasing. This moves you from the exhausting posture of pushing and striving to the natural flow of receptivity. And when you practice this consistently, when you make these 10 minutes a non-negotiable part of your day, something profound begins happening behind the scenes. Your entire energetic signature starts shifting. The frequency you're broadcasting transforms, and the universe, always perfectly responsive to your vibration, begins mirroring back something entirely different. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding the practice intellectually is one thing, but seeing how this actually plays out in real life, how it impacts your decisions, your relationships, your circumstances, that's where the hidden truth reveals its full power. Right opening to receive. If this is resonating with something you've always sensed but never quite understood, let me tell you about Maria, because her journey illustrates exactly what happens when you make this shift in real life, with real problems that probably mirror your own. For 3 solid years, Maria had been on her knees every single night, praying for financial breakthrough with an intensity that bordered on violence. She would literally shake her fists at heaven, demanding answers, begging God to fix her mounting debt, pleading for the money she needed just to keep her head above water. Every prayer was a negotiation, a desperate attempt to get the universe to finally hear her and respond. But here's the paradox she couldn't see at the time. The more desperately she asked, the worse her situation became. It was like watching someone try to catch water with clenched fists. The tighter she gripped, the faster it slipped away. Her entire energy was pure lack, broadcasting, "I don't have," so powerfully that opportunities seemed to actively avoid her. Behind the scenes, her vibration was repelling the very thing she was trying to attract. When Maria discovered this teaching about receptivity, her first reaction was fear. If I stop asking, she thought, God will forget about me completely. But desperation had brought her to a place where she was willing to try something radically different. She committed to 30 days of this practice, 10 minutes each morning and evening, simply sitting in quiet receptivity, opening herself to divine supply without demanding how it should arrive or when it should show up. The first 2 weeks felt like torture. Nothing seemed to be happening externally, and internally she felt empty, almost frightened by the silence. But then the shifts started appearing, subtle at first, then undeniable. An unexpected freelance opportunity came through an old contact she hadn't heard from in years. A debt she thought was permanent got mysteriously forgiven through a company restructuring she had nothing to do with. A refund check she'd completely forgotten about arrived in the mail. None of these things came from her striving or her clever planning. They emerged naturally, organically, as she stopped, blocking the flow with her desperate asking. Or consider David's journey, because his story reveals something even more profound about how consciousness affects physical reality. For 5 years, David battled a chronic illness that doctors couldn't fully explain or cure. His prayer life had become absolutely exhausting, an endless cycle of begging, pleading, trying to visualize his healing, analyzing every symptom with mounting anxiety. He was fighting his body, fighting his condition, fighting reality itself. The transformation came when he encountered this same principle about surrender. Instead of battling his symptoms with anxious mental strategies, instead of begging God to intervene and fix his broken body, David began practicing something revolutionary. He started opening himself each day to receive perfect health as his divine inheritance, not as something he had to earn or convince heaven to give him, but as what already existed in divine consciousness. Within a year, his doctors used a term they reserve for things they can't explain: spontaneous remission. His medical tests showed improvement that had no logical basis in his treatment history. David had a different name for what happened. He called it learning to let God be his mind. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because what happened in Maria's finances and David's health reveals something critical about how this principle operates across every single area of human experience. The impact isn't limited to money or physical healing. When you shift from desperate asking to receptive awareness, your entire reality begins reorganizing itself around this new frequency. Drop divine inheritance in the comments if you're starting to see how this could transform your own situation. Perhaps the most challenging territory for this practice is relationships, because that's where our need for control shows up most intensely. Let me tell you about Jennifer, because her story demonstrates how this principle operates in the messiest, most emotionally charged areas of life. For years, she had been on her knees every single night, praying the same desperate prayer over and over. Please change my husband, make him understand me, fix our communication, transform him into the partner I need. Every prayer was focused outward, asking God to manipulate someone else, to force external circumstances to align with what she thought would make her happy. She couldn't see that this entire approach was actually reinforcing the very separation she was trying to heal. Her asking was broadcasting a relentless signal: I am incomplete. He is wrong. We are broken. And the universe, always responsive to vibration, kept mirroring that brokenness back to her in increasingly painful ways. When Jennifer encountered this teaching about receptive surrender, she resisted it with everything in her. If I stop asking God to fix my marriage, she thought, it will definitely fall apart. But her current strategy clearly wasn't working. The tension was escalating. The distance was growing. So she decided to experiment with something completely different, even though it felt terrifying. Instead of trying to control her husband or manipulate outcomes through desperate petitions, she began practicing something revolutionary. Each morning she would sit quietly, surrendering all her judgments about what he should be doing differently, and simply open herself to receive divine love into her own consciousness. Not love from him, not love dependent on his behavior, just pure divine love, flowing into her awareness without conditions or demands. The transformation started so subtly she almost missed it. She found herself responding to him differently, less reactive when he said things that used to trigger immediate defensiveness, more peaceful in situations that previously sparked conflict. And as she let God be her mind instead of operating from her anxious, controlling thoughts, the entire relationship dynamic began shifting naturally. He started opening up more, The walls between them started coming down, not because she forced it or prayed harder, but because she stopped blocking the flow of love with her desperate need to change him. But here's what makes this practice truly revolutionary. You don't have to wait for those sacred 10 minutes of meditation to experience this shift in consciousness. In fact, some of the most profound transformations happen in the most mundane, ordinary moments of your day. You're washing dishes, hands submerged in soapy water, mind wandering to tomorrow's meeting or yesterday's argument. Pause right there. Acknowledge, God is here. You're stuck in traffic, frustration rising as the cars ahead refuse to move, your schedule falling apart minute by minute. Pause. Recognize, God is here. You're standing in line at the grocery store, mentally calculating your endless to-do list, already exhausted by what's ahead. Pause. Notice, God is here. This isn't asking God to show up as if the divine presence is somewhere else waiting for you to summon it. It's recognizing what's already true in this exact moment. These micro moments become profound resets of your entire consciousness. Each time you pause to acknowledge the presence, you're training your awareness to surrender those controlling thoughts that usually dominate your mind, and to remain in receptive mode instead. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because when you start practicing these recognition moments throughout your day, something shifts in how you respond to challenges. The impact on your decision-making, on your emotional reactions, on your ability to perceive solutions, it all transforms in ways that feel almost miraculous. Put God is here in the comments if you're ready to start practicing this awareness. This brings us to perhaps the most important shift in understanding how to work with challenges when they arise in your life. When you face difficulty, whether it's a health crisis, a financial emergency, a relationship that's falling apart, or a decision that feels impossible, the automatic human response is to identify the problem in great detail and then try to solve it. You focus intensely on the condition, analyzing every aspect of what's wrong, running scenarios in your mind about how to fix it, devising strategies, making plans, trying to control outcomes through sheer mental effort. This seems logical, even responsible. But there's a hidden flaw in this approach that keeps you trapped in the very condition you're trying to escape. By giving all your attention to the problem, by making it the center of your consciousness, you're actually energizing it. You're feeding it with your focus. You're keeping it alive in your experience through the very act of trying to solve it. The breakthrough comes when you realize something radical. You don't need to treat the condition at all. You treat your consciousness instead. When facing any challenge, instead of focusing on the problem and devising mental strategies to fix it, you practice something completely different. You say within yourself, I release this situation to divine intelligence. I open myself to receive God's perfect solution. Notice the fundamental shift happening here. You're not analyzing the problem. You're not asking for a specific outcome based on your limited understanding of what should happen. You're surrendering your thinking about the situation entirely and allowing divine intelligence to work through it. This creates a gateway for solutions that your human mind, with all its limitations and fears and blind spots, could never conceive on its own. Behind the scenes, while you're releasing your grip on the problem, divine wisdom is orchestrating circumstances, arranging opportunities, preparing breakthroughs in ways that would be impossible if you were still trying to control everything through anxious mental calculations. The impact of this practice on your daily life is profound. Those decisions that have been paralyzing you with fear suddenly become clear, not because you tried harder to figure them out, but because divine wisdom flows through you naturally when your anxious thinking finally steps aside. But this brings us to the ultimate revelation, the hidden truth that changes everything you've ever believed about yourself and your relationship with the divine. Your entire life has operated from one fundamental belief. You are a separate human being, disconnected from God, trying to get things from an external deity who may or may not respond to your requests. This belief has shaped everything: why you ask, why you beg, why you feel so desperate when prayers seem unanswered. Here's the truth Smith Wigglesworth understood, the revelation that the mystics discovered and that transforms the entire game. You are not separate from God trying to receive gifts from an external source. You are the very Consciousness of God, receiving awareness of your own infinite nature. This isn't metaphor or poetic language designed to make you feel better. This is the actual truth about your identity. When you surrender every thought and let God be your mind, you're not getting something new that you didn't have before. You're removing the veil that has blocked your recognition of what has always been yours. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding this intellectually is one thing, but experiencing what happens when you actually live from this awareness, that's where everything in your reality begins to shift in ways that seem impossible from your current perspective. Write, "I am divine consciousness," in the comments, if this truth is awakening something in you. If you've made it this far with me, I want you to know something. You're not here by accident. The fact that you've stayed through this entire exploration tells me you're genuinely ready for this shift in consciousness. You're not just casually browsing spiritual content. You're actively seeking the transformation that comes from letting God become your only thought. I create these videos because I truly believe these insights have the power to change lives. Not through my words, but through the eternal truths they point toward. If this message resonated with something deep inside you, I'd love for you to join this community of seekers who are learning to move from separation consciousness to divine receptivity. Hit that subscribe button so you can continue this journey with us, because each video explores another dimension of what it means to live from divine intelligence rather than limited human thinking. And here's what would mean the world to me. Drop a comment below saying this message was meant for me, so I know you were here, that you received this teaching, that something shifted in you as we walked through this together. Your presence in this community matters more than you realize. If this video created a connection for you, a simple tap on the like button helps this teaching reach others who are searching for exactly what you just discovered. It's a small gesture that creates ripples far beyond what we can see. There's a video right here that goes even deeper into how divine consciousness operates when you completely release the illusion of control. Click on it and let's continue this conversation together. I'll meet you there.